Good morning, hello and welcome. You're watching CNN News 18 with me, Poonam Burde. Our continuous coverage here on CNN News 18 goes on as far as Prime Minister Modi's America visit is concerned. Remember, he began his three-day visit yesterday to the United States, starting with a bilateral meeting just a few minutes, in fact, after he landed in Delaware. The first bilateral for the Prime Minister yesterday was with US President Joe Biden. He then, of course, sat down with the counterparts of Australia and Japan as well. As far as Joe Biden is concerned, Prime Minister Modi and the US President exchanged a warm hug before they entered Joe Biden's personal residence for these discussions. During this visit, Prime Minister Modi also participated in the Quad Leaders Summit to strengthen international collaboration among member countries. Quad is here to stay was the unequivocal message that came to the fore from the four countries, part of the grouping. Prime Minister Modi departed from Wilmington, Delaware. Just a short while ago, he is in fact expected to land in New York anytime now. The big highlight of his day today, which is Sunday in the United States, is going to be the diaspora event that he addresses later tonight for us here in India. But the Prime Minister took to social media a short while ago. He noted that talks between Quad leaders were extremely fruitful. He is now scheduled to address the Summit of the Future at United Nations General Assembly in New York tomorrow. This trip of the Prime Minister aims to enhance India-US relations. It focuses on key areas such as technology, trade and regional security. Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were expected to discuss various global challenges, and that's exactly what they did. They explored opportunities for cooperation as well. Several agreements were signed between the two.
हमारा मैसेज साफ है, क्वाड is here to stay, to assist, to partner and to complement. हम किसी के खिलाफ नहीं हैं। हम सभी एक रूल्स बेस्ड इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर, संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता के सम्मान और सभी मसलों के शांतिपूर्ण ढंग से हल निकालने का समर्थन करते हैं। फ्री, ओपन, इंक्लूसिव और प्रॉस्परस इंडो पैसिफिक हमारी साझा प्राथमिकता और साझा प्रतिबद्धता है। हमने मिलकर हेल्थ सिक्योरिटी, क्रिटिकल एंड इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजीज, क्लाइमेट चेंज, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग जैसे क्षेत्रों में कई सकारात्मक और समावेशी इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं।
In practice, the Quad Cancer Moonshot means more collaboration between our hospitals, research centers, and cancer foundations, more investment in screenings, treatment, and research, and more exchanges between our countries to improve vaccination rates all across the region. Right now, only 1 in 10 women across the Indo-Pacific, which is the most populated part of the world, have received HPV vaccinations for cervical cancer. So I'm proud to announce that our four countries, the leaders behind me, and many organizations here today are committing over $150 million for HPV screening and therapeutics. And next year, doctors and nurses from the U.S. Navy will begin a program to train Indo-Pacific counterparts in conducting cervical cancer screening and vaccination so we can reach every woman in the region. And it matters. Folks, let me close with this. During my first year as president, I received a letter from a mother from Tennessee. She'd been recently diagnosed with cervical cancer. She said she experienced every emotion, from denial to anger to fear to grief. Jill and I remember those feelings as well. But when she asked herself, what am I going to do? Am I going to give up? Am I going to fight? She answered, I choose to fight. We've got to choose to fight. Choose to fight as a society. Ladies and gentlemen, today America, Australia, India, and Japan choose to fight.
Joining me on this broadcast is former Indian Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Zenia Bahel, Foreign Affairs expert, will be joining us shortly. Siddhant, my colleague, will be joining us shortly as well to get us more perspective. But Prabhu Dayal, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNN News 18. If you've seen this Wilmington declaration, as it's called, the joint statement that came to the fore from after the Quad meeting, what are your first thoughts? What are the highlights for you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I think the declaration is very significant because it points very clearly to the fact that the Quad member countries are determined to cooperate and work towards the betterment of life and conditions of the countries of the Indo-Pacific region. You know, the Indo-Pacific is extremely significant. And for India, it has a lot of meaning because India really is at the center of it. It's the Indo-Pacific region. And we want to do our level best to promote well-being in this region. Now, there are initiatives which need to be taken, and I think this Quad Summit has taken a very significant initiative in terms of the cancer moonshot. Now, India has committed $7.5 billion and has also offered to share its expertise in this area. But at the same time, India has tried to point out that there is a need to develop the infrastructure of the countries of the Indo-Pacific region. And for that reason, all forms of assistance would be quite necessary. And I must tell you that security is a major aspect, although Prime Minister Modi and other leaders also categorically said that Quad is not directed against any particular country. But the fact is that the countries of the Indo-Pacific region, the smaller countries, are facing security threats. And these threats come from a number of sources. China has been very prickly about the Quad because China thinks that Quad is directed against it. But I think the summit sent out a message that Quad is not directed against anybody. It is only meant to promote the happiness and well-being of countries of the Indo-Pacific region. Of course, President Biden invited the Quad member countries to take part in the Coast Guard exercise. And that, I think, sends a signal to all sorts of elements. You know, there is piracy. There are very malified elements operating in the Indo-Pacific region. And there is need to step up Coast Guard activities. So if the 4 Quad members have a joint Coast Guard exercise, I think it sends out a signal. And in due course, this exercise could co-opt member countries of the ASEAN, for instance, or other countries in the Indo-Pacific region. So I think that the declaration sent out a very good message, and the Quad Summit has also been very successful in harnessing the common views of the Quad member countries and conveying the message all around the globe that we mean to do well. We work towards common good, and that is what the summit is for.
Absolutely. And you were talking about military engagement. That's something perhaps that going forward from here on is something that Quad nations would want to take up. But, you know, that's something that has been criticized as well. China, of course, completely unnerved by these overtures. They've taken umbrage to the fact that this region in itself is called the Indo-Pacific region and not by the name that they'd want it to be. They've called it, they've called the grouping all sorts of names like the Asian NATO that's trying to undermine China and things like that. But as far as this particular declaration is concerned, Prabhu Dayal, all of the 4 countries, all of the 4 leaders have made it very clear that this sort of expansionist moves, this sort of misuse of the Coast Guard is something that has to be checked.
Yes, indeed. Let's not forget that Quad was conceived of as a security dialogue. It was the quadrilateral security dialogue. And security against what? Security, of course, against forces which try and, bully smaller countries or press their own interests, even at the cost of the interests of a whole host of other countries. And frankly, China has always been the elephant in the room as far as Quad is concerned. Because if China is upset, surely it is because of the fact that China finds that the hat fits it. There is an old saying, if the hat fits, you wear it. And who else but China comes across as a country which is engaging in damaging the security interests of the whole host of countries which are in the Indo-Pacific region. So very frankly, while China has, the Quad members have tried to assuage Chinese feelings and say it is not directed against anybody, but China is aware that it is threatening the interests of a whole host of countries, as I said. And therefore, Quad is trying to make efforts to keep in check, and Quad is trying to help a whole host of countries to develop their infrastructure, for instance, in the area of cancer research. And why is it necessary? Because then their dependence on China comes down. China has been so preponderant in its influence in this entire region that countries inevitably come under its sway and under its bullying, under its influence. So if these countries are strengthened and they are enabled to have their own means and resources, then naturally their dependence on China comes down. So Quad has a very, very sharp initiative. It has a global vision, and I think this is what comes across through the declaration.
Absolutely. Zina Bahel also joining us on this broadcast for more perspective. But let me get in my colleague Siddhant first. And Siddhant, as far as we were talking about the joint declaration, the Wilmington Declaration, as it's called, after the Quad meeting, it speaks specifically about maritime security, the steps that are going to be taken as far as securing the Indian Ocean region is concerned, the Indo-Pacific region is concerned. We are going to be seeing a joint exercise in 2025 as well.
Well, that's right, Poonam. In fact, there are a lot of takeaways from Quad Wilmington. And, one cannot deny the contribution President Biden has made to strengthen Quad. Yesterday, it was a sixth Quad meeting at the leaders level in a row. So, you rightly pointed out, there has been a mention of existing Pacific Islands Forum Fisheries Agency, also Information Fusion Center, which is existing in Gurgaon, Poonam. But as far as new announcements are concerned, there is an initiative to maximize tools to provide through MPDA to countries in the Indo-Pacific, more tools to the countries in the Indo-Pacific in the maritime domain. There's also Quad Maritime Legal Dialogue, which has been launched. In fact, joint statement also says that the plan is to provide cutting-edge technology in the maritime domain. Now, this is a big announcement. In fact, Coast Guard's planning to launch first ever Quad at Sea Shop Observer Mission in 2025. So they are calling it a Sea Shop Observer Mission, but actually it's kind of a joint exercise. And also, Poonam, one thing is very important to highlight: if Quad is announcing joint exercise of Coast Guards, then we all who follow geopolitics know it very well that who misuses Coast Guard in South China Sea. And perhaps this is kind of a counter to what is happening in South China Sea, especially the countries like Philippines and others are the victim of that aggression. Also, Quad Indo-Pacific Logistics Network Pilot Project to pursue shared airlift capacity in order to support civilian response. So, on the name of civilian response, humanitarian assistance, Quad is also focusing on the logistic network pilot project to pursue airlift capacity. So, we could see more airlift capacity to be developed in the Indo-Pacific region. Then Quad Ports of the Future Partnership. This is also a conference which India will host in 2025. Then also the fellowship of Quad has been expanded. Poonam, very interesting. I would not take much time of yours. There is an Open ARIAN project in Southeast Asia. One is already in Palau. Quad has planned to come up with more ARIAN projects in the Indo-Pacific, and also BioExplore initiative is interesting, which has found mention in the joint statement. This will drive AI-driven exploration. So Quad is also planning AI-driven exploration. So these are the key takeaways, Poonam, and some of the big takeaways from the joint statement that we have received after the Quad meeting. The Coast Guard coordination and joint exercise is a big announcement. Usage of AI techniques, usage of cutting-edge technologies in maritime domain is a big announcement. Then there is also a conference as far as the ports intend to hold a regional ports conference, which India will hold next year. So these are some key announcements. Perhaps also once again establishes that these leaders, these countries are committed for free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific.
Absolutely.
And their commitment for Quad is once again established.
Absolutely. Siddhant, thank you so much for putting that in perspective and getting us all of those details. Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, continues to be with us. Zinia Bahal also with us on this broadcast. Zinia, as far as the Quad grouping is concerned and what came out of this particular meeting, there are several areas that need to be focused on. The two conflicts that the world currently faces, the Russia-Ukraine war, which has been going on for over a year and a half now, and the conflict in West Asia. That's something that did come up. It was condemned unequivocally, as it would have been on expected lines. But as far as resolution to these conflicts are concerned, among the Quad grouping, among the world as a whole, is India's role being seen as a mediator, as somebody who could play a more proactive role in the resolution of these conflicts?
Yes, absolutely. When you look historically at the stance that India has taken, right, we talk about the non-alignment movement and we talk about India's strategy to not align. When India hugged Vladimir Putin, when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hugged Vladimir Putin, he also visited Zelensky, right? India's role is extremely important in a way that it's a big strategic partner to the United States. It's actually one of the biggest buyers. At this point, I think in 2023, it was declared the biggest buyer of U.S. military equipment, especially with its purchase of Air Force-related equipment, right, and aircraft. So we look at that, and then we look at amongst other countries. Russia is a major supplier to India as well, right? So in terms of strategic partnerships, in terms of military-related partnerships, India has a strong relationship with both US and Russia, and that has been a point of contention for the Indo-US relationship altogether. However, in this specific summit, there was talk about the semiconductor plant, that is being built in Maharashtra, and cooperation on AI. AI has been talked about during the summit. It has been a major sort of point of discussion during the Quad summit. And cybersecurity, again, is another topic of discussion that has been largely covered. And these were not as important, right? If you remember, last year Modi addressed the Congress here in the United States, and he talked about AI. But there is a growing focus on that, and especially AI in military and cybersecurity, which is where there is growing threat, right? There's growing threat with election interference in the United States. India is again receiving that IT sector boom with U.S. companies investing in India, right? U.S. companies using resources from India, including Tata and Infosys. So when we talk about the Quad Summit, we cannot ignore the impact that AI has had, the impact that cybersecurity-related discussions have had, and overall that impact on your discussions with regards to defense cooperation and defense collaboration. You talk about maritime security, of course, that's a major part of it, right? Because AI is going to be used for a lot of equipment with regards to that. During this Quad Summit, I think it's very important that we also focus on AI, on machine learning, on large language models, on quantum computing, and the establishment of the semiconductor plant that was discussed between Biden and Modi, amongst other topics with regards to defense and maritime security.
Absolutely. That perhaps was discussed when the two leaders sat down for their bilateral as well. This is the last bilateral that Prime Minister Modi is going to have with Joe Biden. There is a change of guard that is expected. Which way, of course, it goes, we don't know just yet. But Ambassador Dayal, if we do see a Republican president next in the United States, many believe that the bonhomie or the rapport that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have shared has been much greater than what he's shared with perhaps Joe Biden. So if Donald Trump was to make a comeback to the White House, how do you think that would fare as far as ties between the two countries are concerned? Also as far as the Quad grouping is concerned, because one of the things that this declaration speaks of is climate change and combating that. That's something that Donald Trump has been vocal about, dismissing it as any threat at all.
Well, I've always believed that there is bipartisan support for India and for the Indo-US relationship. That is to say, whether there is a Democratic president in the White House or there is a Republican president, support for a stronger relationship will continue and will endure. And I must tell you, I've just returned from the United States earlier this week, and I had the opportunity to interact with a whole host of people, opinion makers as well as common people. And they all felt that the US-India relationship will grow from strength to strength, and that all indications are that the countries are working closely together to make this happen. Now, if you recall, the initiative for critical and emerging technologies, or the ICET, had been signed. And there was a lot of emphasis on this during Prime Minister's visit to Washington in June last year. So the relationship now is being guided by the belief of both countries that the ICET should shape not just their relations, but their influence, their helpfulness, their interaction with other countries. Now, the emphasis during Prime Minister's visit could be on issues like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, semiconductors, of course, defense and space. Now, these are all areas which pertain to the ICET. And interestingly, the Quad is also now carrying an imprint of the belief of both India and the United States in matters which pertain to, for instance, semiconductors or artificial intelligence or quantum computing. And both India and the United States, along with the other two Quad members, feel that there should be a resolute supply chains. Because, for instance, in the context of semiconductors, if there is a disruption of the supply chains, then naturally it impacts the activities of a whole range of outfits and organizations. So both India and the United States want to ensure that there is resolute supply chain mechanism. And I think the Quad has focused a lot of attention in this regard. Now, I may also mention that my fellow panelist, Ms. Behl, spoke about issues which are very, very relevant in the context of the bilateral relationship. Yes, indeed, the bilateral relationship between India and the United States is something that gives a lot of strength and meaning to Quad, because India and the United States are the largest players. And of course, Japan is a major economic player, but India and the United States have a big role to play in the security dimension of Quad. Let's not overlook, even though a message has been sent that Quad is not against any country, but, and this is a fundamental but, Quad is a quadrilateral security dialogue. Security is threatened by certain forces, and India and the United States have been consistently saying that they want to work against such elements. I may also mention, India has practiced defense diplomacy in a very skillful manner. For instance, it has given the BrahMos missiles to Philippines, and Indonesia is now interested also in that. India has given a corvette to Vietnam. India is engaging in military exercises with the ASEAN countries. So all these steps highlight how we want to strengthen the defense infrastructure of countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And I think a message goes to the concerned quarters in this respect.
Right, we'll discuss that further, Prabhu Dayal and Zenia Bahal, because I request you to stay on with us and humor me, because every time the Prime Minister is outside the country and on a visit as landmark as this, that visit really is incomplete unless he meets the diaspora there. There's always a diaspora event, a big one in countries like the United States that we've seen in the past that takes place. One such event is going to take place in Long Island later this evening for us here India time. My colleague Aman Sharma was on ground there in New York, getting us that excitement that's building up there. Take a look at these reports.
The Indian diaspora in the United States of America is over 5 million strong. 13 to 14,000 of them will be here at the Nassau Veterans Coliseum in Long Island, New York, where Prime Minister Modi will be coming on Sunday, and we're bringing you this exclusive peek of this big venue, which will be packed with 14,000 to 15,000 Indian Americans on Sunday. When the Prime Minister comes here, these gates are open for this mega diaspora event Modi and US, for which Mr. Modi is coming on Sunday morning for this particular event in New York time, and in India it will be evening blockbuster time when Mr. Modi will be on the stage. Behind me you can already see the Indian flag, the US flag, and that is why the event is called Modi and US. Mr. Modi will be on that stage giving a passionate speech to the Indian diaspora, for which he is well known of, and for many years Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his US trips has made these diaspora events a huge thing. There are 500 artists and performers. This particular event will feature cultural extravagances on 2 stages. This is the main stage. There will also be an outer stage here. The Echoes of India, a journey through art and tradition. This is the theme of this particular event, a cultural extravaganza showcasing 380.
Even as we see that venue which is gearing up for the Prime Minister, these are live visuals coming in of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's landed in New York. He was in Delaware and Wilmington for the Quad Summit and for the bilaterals a few hours ago. He wrapped all of that up. He now is in New York, just landing there. It's late there in the United States. The Prime Minister arriving in New York. Rest for the night, and then of course we have the big diaspora event India time later this evening. There's also the UN Summit of the Future that the Prime Minister is going to be addressing on Monday India time. But as of now, the Prime Minister landing there in New York, the excitement building. Diaspora are waiting to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister. We see the Indian diaspora every time the Prime Minister is in another country. The Indian diaspora there is there to welcome him, be it at the airport or at the hotel that he's staying in. And those similar scenes were seen yesterday when the Prime Minister landed in Delaware as well. That's perhaps what we are going to be witnessing in New York as the Prime Minister makes his way from the airport there to the hotel that he's staying at. You know, the Prime Minister there just deplaning in New York. We are going to be seeing him arrive at his hotel in just a few minutes from now. It has been a long day for the Prime Minister, several engagements including the Quad Summit, the 3 bilaterals with US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Now the Prime Minister is in New York. He, of course, is going to be addressing the diaspora event later this evening. We will keep getting you all those updates from New York now, from the United States. The excitement that's building up, all those voices will come up here on CNN News 18 after this quick break.